Welcome to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast, where the goal is to improve organizations and serve students one leader at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Jochum. If you're a department chair in higher education or any type of educational leader, and you want to improve yourself to better serve and influence those you lead, you've come to the right place. Because the best way to improve an organization is to improve its leader. Let's get started. Welcome back, friends, and thank you for joining us once again on the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. Hey, today I am excited to welcome Mr. David Stack. David is the assistant principal at Susquehanna Township Middle School in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Mr. Stack, in addition to serving as the assistant principal there, has over 20 years of experience in the K-12 schools. David has a master's degree in reading and administration and supervision, and he is currently enrolled in a doctorate program in leadership and innovation at Purdue Global University. So, David, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Well, likewise, for some of the listeners that may not know, one of the great things about being in the education field, be it K-12 or higher ed, is you make really great connections and colleagues. And David and I attended the same, I guess you call it, workshop a few months ago in Atlanta, the Within Our Ranks workshop or seminar, which is why I wanted to have David on. Those that have been listening hopefully realize, yes, this is called the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. And while I certainly hope to help those serving in higher ed become better leaders, I think anyone in the education space and beyond can benefit from this. And if you are in higher education, regardless of your content, meaning whatever your professor job was before, you are now an educational leader. You serve students, you serve faculty, and they show up every day to teach and to learn and do other things. And so I have tremendously benefited from having people such as David really mentor me and give me an advice as a leader. And so we're just gonna chat today. And I know that David's experience, over 2 decades of experience in K-12, is going to add value to you. So David, first of all, can you start for folks that may not be familiar with either Harrisburg or Susquehanna Township Middle School? Can you start by telling us a little bit about your school, the area, and what you do as assistant principal?
Yes, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is the capital of Pennsylvania. We are right on the border of the Harrisburg School District, so we are right there next to the city of Harrisburg. We have 750 students in our middle school. We have a principal, myself, and another assistant principal, and a dean of students as our admin team working with the students and other issues. We are the number one ranked diverse school district in the state of Pennsylvania, and the last I checked, the number 3 in the nation. Our biggest subgroup is Nepali students, and what I do on a daily day basis as an assistant principal varies very much from, setting in on meetings or, providing professional development to my staff, running testing assignments, where right now we're getting ramped up for our PSSA, which is the state assessment for our students. So I'm getting all those things in line and ready to go for our teachers and students to be successful this spring in that measurement of their knowledge over the past year. And yeah, I mean, from helping clean up in the cafeteria to, anything that's needed. We're kind of a servant leadership team where, yes, we have the title of principal, assistant principals, things like that, but we're not too shy to go in and cover a class or even help out in the cafeteria when we're short-staffed or anything like that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Some of the listeners, I believe it's Simon Sinek, has a book called Leaders Eat Last, and it reminded me of that. And it's based on in the military, senior ranking officers are oftentimes the last to eat because those that they serve that need the, I guess, the nourishment and the energy first need to go ahead. And that is couldn't be a better description of a servant leader. Yes, you're an administrator. You have a very important, what I call titled role, because we don't need a title to be a leader, but you have that. But yet there are days that you, like you said, you might have to pick up a mop and clean something up in the cafeteria. Just a lot of different things. So because of that, David, I always like to ask people um, about your leadership journey.
Mm.
I'm assuming you started as a classroom teacher and then moved into other areas. But why don't you just share a little bit about that leadership journey? You have over 2 decades of experience in K-12. Obviously, you've been very successful. What's that look like for you?
For me, it's been a long journey to become, I guess, official school leader. I've had my certificate for principalship for over 10 years. During that time, I've taken on, as a classroom teacher, building wide leadership roles and still be a teacher. Whether it was when I was in Montgomery County, or Maryland, I was a science liaison between our science department and our school building because it's countywide in Maryland, so it's a huge operation. Whether it was in a smaller school, I was a head teacher. Basically, it was kind of like an assistant principal role. Our district had four elementary buildings, one principal, and the four buildings are spread out 20, 30 miles apart. So I kind of ran the day to day and touched base with the principal why he was not in the building, and just looking for those opportunities and to build myself and build my knowledge and you know experience before I became a assistant principal 2 years ago at Susquehanna Township Middle School. And those looking to be a leader, I think, just look for opportunities. Whether small, or it doesn't always have to be have the title of principal, assistant principal, or whatever. Just look for those opportunities to lead from within your classroom, where you might not think it's a big deal, but it's your building experience. And for me, my journey's been over 10 years since I got my certification to be a principal to finding the perfect landing spot, I feel, for me and my personality. And, I got a lot of no's over those 10 years. And I think at the beginning of my uh, start to look into leadership, I was kind of just any opening, just firing off resumes, to applying, where, I got a lot of no's. Now that I look back on it, I'm thankful for those no's because looking back and reflecting, I wasn't ready to be a leader back then. Now I think that in where I landed and my administrative team, it was the perfect opportunity, and it was you know, and it came all together, and it's working out great for me right now.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think anyone listening that has tried or is trying to take that next step up in leadership. You mentioned fit. You mentioned readiness to lead. I don't care what the organization is. I think that's very important, and it's easy to get discouraged. But we need to realize that I think we all, as leaders, have a fit somewhere.
Mhm.
So along those lines, David, then how do you define leadership?
For me, leadership is just pitching in. Showing by example, showing by action. A lot of people can, talk the talk and are great at, talking about leadership and what it means and, how it should be. But I think for me, and definitely my style of leadership is just rolling up my sleeves and, you know, going to work, whatever it takes to make it better for our students in our building, the students in our district. And for me, that's what true leadership is, by action. Action speaks louder than words for me.
So you mentioned that I heard you say you've taught in Maryland,
Hmm.
now in Pennsylvania. It sounds like at one time maybe it was more of a rural or spread out district. Now you're, it's safe to say, in a maybe a larger non-rural district. I guess what I'm getting at is the question of culture and climate. Anyone in leadership understands that that's so important for us to not only be aware of, but every place. You said fit as a job. Well, a lot of that is because every place has its own culture and climate. Even those, an elementary school could be an elementary school from the outside, a high school, a high school, a college, a college. Once we go into those buildings, once we go into those classrooms, those faculty meetings, etc., there's a distinct culture and a climate. And so I know that you're very familiar with that, especially in the K-12 space. So, I'll take maybe a different route. If someone came to you and said, "I'm not that familiar with K-12 leadership, but man, I hear a lot of this culture climate talk." Um, what's your experience or maybe thoughts with that? And if somebody said, wow, I know it's important, but I just don't know where to approach this whole concept of the culture and climate in my school, my district, or heck, even my classroom as a teacher.
Right. Well, for me, the culture and climate piece is building that relationship, trust with your staff, um, letting them know, hey, we're in it together. I'm going to ask you to do things that you're not going to be comfortable with, but I'm going to be there to support you. And I tell my teachers, especially going in for observations, things like that, hey, you know, I've been in charge of PD. I've been asking you and talking about different strategies all year long. I would rather go in and see you fail at a strategy that you're trying for the first time and, trying to work it out than go in and see you, stay the same that you taught 10 years ago, because our kiddos are not the same as 10 years ago. And for me, and I always preach this, is that you got to try it 5 times before you say it's not for me. So give it some good, honest effort. And you know what? If I go in and I see something that's going wrong or went wrong, that's okay, because we all need to improve. And if you have that mindset of, yeah, okay, I tried something, you can reflect on it and say, you know, I could have did this better, or I should have done this, but at the time I didn't. That's great. We can always work with uh, mindset of reflection and needs improvement, rather than nope, I did it my way and I'm not going to change.
Two words that you said that always resonate with me with culture and climate are relationships and trust. I think that's very very important, and it's safe to say that the culture and climate that you're a part of, that you promote and that you value, is clearly based on not only relationships and trust, but you mentioned something very important. I think it's crucial that whether from my perspective as a higher education department chair, your perspective, middle school administrator, people need to know that it's safe to make mistakes. People need to know that while there are some things we can't choose, like we have to teach these classes, we have to be observed so many times. I think within those boundaries, though, I know personally, I have always felt so much better when I'm in a culture and climate where I always say within reason, right? I mean, if I mess up and I, violate a major law, okay, that's on me. But it needs to be a safe place to make mistakes because no one's perfect. And for the listeners that we have that might not be too familiar with the K-12 world, middle school, most people that teach middle school will tell you that it's the best place. It's where it's at. The kids are a perfect combination of a lot of things. But because of that, I can tell you people like David, they got to be on their game, right? Because middle school is just, I don't know even how to describe it, David, but what I'm getting at is I can tell people when I started my career, part of my first job, I spent some time in a middle school as a traveling district teacher, and that was probably the most fun part of my day was being in that culture and that climate. But it takes really good leaders and teachers.
Mhm.
So I didn't mean to go on that tangent there, David. But is there anything in your experience that you have found? I'm sure you enjoy it, but that does add a little different flavor or nuance to being a leader in a middle school?
Yeah, we call it middle school weird, and when we're interviewing and bringing people on, we look for that fit. I have a certain question that I first time I threw it out, my principal kind of looked at me. We did it over Zoom, and he was like, "What are you doing? Why are you asking that?" And I said, "It's an icebreaker. It's to see what their reaction is because it's a non-traditional question. It's kind of say, hey, we are weird. Are you weird enough to join us? Because middle school kiddos are weird, and they, they're and you got to be able to go with that flow in that mix. It takes a special person, especially teacher, to work with them day in and day out in the middle school classroom. So we got to find that right fit.
Yeah, I've often said, because I was a K-12 teacher, I now chair a teacher ed department. Teaching middle school is like golf. You're either addicted and do it every chance you get, or you don't do it at all.
Right.
Like, there's no in between with middle school. You're either all in, because I mean, all teaching is hard. But
Hmm.
I agree. Teaching middle school, years and years ago, David, the middle school I taught in, they convinced me for part of the like end of the first semester program or assembly, along with a few other teachers. I wore an elf hat and played my trumpet. I was never asked to do that as a high school teacher, but in middle school that was completely acceptable, and I would have maybe seemed non-compliant had I not done that. And so I always tell people, there's just something special and really fun about middle school. Hey, along those lines, David, one of the things that really, I don't want to say differentiates, but when people look at going into those formalized leadership roles, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh boy, I don't know if I want to deal with that big thing called conflict. And I really think the way that we approach conflict it determines our leadership effectiveness and maybe longevity. I know in middle school you have a lot of moving parts, both faculty, staff, community members, all of the above. What's your advice and maybe some things you've learned in your time about addressing conflict?
My advice would be listen before you speak. Listen before you react. Get that side of the story, gather as much information you can, reflect on it, and then address it. And I know sometimes that it's not always possible because everyone wants an answer yesterday. But I guess the best advice I had um, throughout my teaching career was one of my principals said, if it's not life or death, people can wait on an answer. So, even though people want an answer immediately, we're in that a world of immediate, satisfaction or things like that. It's okay to say, hey, I need to think on that. I need to, reflect. I need to see what's best. And my saying is also, and I go into talking to teachers and think and other parents and students, I'm going to do what's best for the majority of the students, not what makes the adults' life comfortable, not what makes a small percentage of the students' life comfortable. I want to affect the most students I can with my decisions. So that's what I try to say is I'm looking, and it might not even make my life comfortable. I might have to, do some more work or work harder. But if it's affecting positively the change in a majority of our students, that's what I want.
I hope everyone heard that. If you are any type of educational leader, K 12, higher ed, David really hit on it there. What is best for the majority of the students? We are here, and I sit here in higher education. And yes, in higher education, we do have nuances, and there are things that make us very different at times in K 12. But at the end of the day, I always say, if you have students and teachers and they show up each day to learn, you're a schoolhouse. And there are some common themes and threads in every schoolhouse pretty much in the world, certainly in this country. And one of them is We need to make sure, and the filter through which we run things is at the end of the day, what's best for students. And as you said, David, it's not necessarily what's easiest for the adults or what's most comfortable for the leaders. I know in my job, there are decisions I could make that would be so much easier on me and my faculty, but you know what? It's not what's best for our students. I would say we call it work for a reason. The reason we get paid to work and then retirement's retirement is a lot of our job serving others is doing what we don't want to do because it's what's best for others. And so I'm really glad you pointed that out. In your career, both as a teacher and now as an assistant principal, when we talk about the things you've touched on, leadership, promoting a culture, addressing conflict, even in the time you've been in your current role there, is there something that if you could go back and tell yourself something either at the start of your current job or even the start of your career that you think would have made life a little easier from a leadership standpoint, what do you wish you would have known, or what would you go back and tell yourself?
Um, to be patient, like I said, when the fit is right, the door will open for you. When I came into this position as assistant principal, I wasn't looking for a leadership role. It fell into my lap. I was happy, content doing what I was doing, not even thinking about um, being a principal or anything like that until someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have this opening. I want you to apply for it." And from there, everything fell into place. And like I said, it was a good fit for me. And yeah, just that, be patient, be humble, and be reflective. I think you need to reflect on everything you do, every lesson, every day. Well, how could I did that do it better for tomorrow or for the next year or for the next group of students I'm interacting with.
So, what currently I like to ask folks,
Mm.
currently what are you doing to improve yourself as a leader? Is there anything you're watching, listening to, reading? And I like to ask this because there might be somebody listening that has no idea that resource exists, and you might help them. So, anything you're doing or have done that you would like to share that was impactful to you for your own professional development as a leader?
For me right now, I'm big into listening to podcasts, like your podcast, a bunch of different podcasts out there. I listen to as many podcasts I can while I'm driving to work and driving home from work, and books out there, like people that are on, they say, "Hey, I wrote this book and it's about this subject. Oh, let me go read it. Is it, maybe that will help me, not maybe not immediately, but maybe down the road." And that's where I get a lot of my ideas from, listen to podcasts, and going from there. So,
One thing that I would like to share with people and kind of brag on David is this summer in Nashville, Tennessee. He and I believe a colleague will be presenting at the Making Schools Work Conference. It's a great conference. You can look it up online. And I would just like to ask David if you want to share a little bit of your work and what people that will attend that conference, what they can expect to learn if they come to your session.
yes, this summer in July, I think it's July 9th through the 14th, I believe. I'd have to go back and look at the website to be exact dates. But yes, it's going to be me, myself. You get me for a full hour on a breakout session, um, live and in person with all my goofiness. That we are going to talk about building relationships, building relationships with students, with the families, and with the community. How can you bring them all together to help you be a better leader, help your building be successful, and help your students be successful? So I'm really looking forward to that. This is my first time presenting at a conference, especially at this level. So it's a big conference. So it's kind of me stepping out of my comfort zone, stretching myself, growing, have that growth mindset. So it's me, taking my first step into getting out there with people. And for me, I'm a lifelong learner. So hopefully that when I'm up there on stage, I give some nuggets of wisdom that people say, "Oh, I never thought about it that way. Let me take it home and try it." And I will be gathering wisdom from everyone I meet, everyone I talk to, any other sessions I attend during that time. So I look forward to it. It should be a great time. Come out, be my friend for an hour, give me some feedback, tell me what you like, tell me what you didn't like. That's the only way I'm going to get better. So I appreciate, as long as it's done, not making me cry, but I appreciate negative feedback because it's going to make me grow.
Well, I appreciate, David. I always say vulnerability is a leader's superpower, and what you mentioned, it does take vulnerability. It takes a growth mindset to do something new, to push yourself. But I really appreciate that you're doing that, and I can tell people that you're going to do a great job without giving it away, but maybe as more of a an advertisement. What's one thing that if they come to your session, or if somebody were to email you and say, "Hey, I know that you talk about building relationships with students, family, and community members. Man, I'm really struggling. What's one thing you can tell me that might help me?" So, what is one thing that people you would like people to know that is important when you're, I'll just say stakeholders, because we have stakeholders in higher ed, we have them in, what's one important thing to develop relationships, either something that somebody should do, be aware of, or maybe learn to do when it comes to relationship building with stakeholders?
For me, it would be active listening. You gain a lot from just listening. Students, parents, community members, when they're coming to you, whether if they're coming to you hot and angry or anything like, they just want to be heard. They want to get their point across. They don't want to be interrupted, you know. And I truly believe that if you just listen before you speak, let them get what they need to say off their mind, and then, reflect on what they said, take it to heart, even if it's criticism, and say, well, this is what I can do for you at this time. You know, here's how I can help you. All right. And this is what I can do. This is the power I have to help you, you know, fix the situation. Because most people come in with a problem, whether it's parents, students, community members. They're reaching out because they have an issue. So listen to the issue without speaking. Give them the first, until they run out of breath, and then it's your turn. They'll give you time to speak. They want to hear what you're going to do for them. They want to hear how you're going to fix their problem, and be honest with them. I'm sorry, that's not my. I can't do anything for that. But let me put you in touch with. Let me put you in touch with the person that could possibly help you. Here's what I could do for you today. Here's what I could do for you at this moment. But you know, you really need to reach out to this person. They will be better able to help you and get that problem solved and make you a happy customer.
Well, I think that's great advice. I found this over the years too, probably a lot through doing it wrong at once. But as David said, we all leadership conflict happens every day. That's okay. It's part of the job. And a lot of it is people just want to be heard. They don't necessarily expect you to fix everything. But what I learned, and David hit on this, is simply replying with something like, "I don't have that answer, but here's what I suggest. I can't fix that today, but here's what we can do." In many ways, um, that is all they wanted to know. Is you listened to them, and you didn't shut them down. You didn't, stonewall them, or whatever word you want to use. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because it might seem simple when you said, "Listen, hear them out and then tell them what you can do," but it's so powerful in any conversation, especially if somebody comes in and they really want to engage in some level of conflict. I think that is very helpful. Let them be heard, and then let them know what you can or can't do. You're still setting boundaries, but you're not ignoring them, and you're working together to tell them what can be done. Well, David, any final things you would like to share with our listeners? I know that they're gonna, or they will get value out of this wherever they lead. Great advice about being patient, making sure you're a fit, how to build relationships, how to be humble and keep a growth mindset, and lot of golden nuggets here that I know that they'll want to dig into a little deeper. But as we close out the show, any final thing that you would like to share or build upon that we've already discussed?
I think for me, just that, my door is open. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn at David Stack. If you have questions, comments, and let's build my network. Let's build our network. Let's share with one another. Let's learn from one another,
Mhm.
and let's make you know K to 12 education and higher education better. That's what my goal is.
Well, thank you. I agree. And you will be able to, I'll put David's contact, his LinkedIn address in the show notes. So again, thank you. David Stack, Assistant Principal at Susquehanna Township Middle School in Harrisburg, PA. David, really, really appreciate you giving us some time and adding value to our listeners and to the listeners. As always, thank you for taking time to improve your organizations and enrich the lives of those within them by developing yourself as a leader. Best of luck. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. If you want to learn more about my leadership philosophy and how to be an effective chair, please consider my book, The Department Chair, A Practical Guide to Effective Leadership. You can find this and learn more about me by going to cjleadership.com. Also, please be sure to like this podcast, leave a review, and share with your colleagues. Thanks again for improving your organization and those you serve by improving yourself. Take care.